Thank you so much to thank you so much to CPS Energy for being with us today to give a presentation on the winter preparedness and the pre-rate presentation. I'd love to introduce our interim president and chief executive officer, Rudy Garza. He is he's been with CPS for more than 25 years as a leader, and this is the nation's largest municipally owned electric and natural gas utility. He has served both in the public and private sectors over the course of his career. He joined in 2012 and previously served as Chief Customer and Stakeholder Engagement Officer and as Senior Vice President of Distribution Services and Operations. So thank you, Rudy. I love seeing you in this position. Then we have Corey Kaczynski, who is the Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer for CPS Energy. He oversees accounting, financial reporting, corporate financial planning, cost management, as well as treasury, strategic pricing and cost recovery, enterprise risk management, and financial information systems management. I hope you don't have to put that on your card. Corey, he joined CPS Energy in 2006, and we are happy to have you with us. I also would like to introduce Deanna Hardwick. She is the Executive Vice President of Customer Strategy, and she oversees all operations when it comes to our customers. And of course, the fabulous Carmen Nielsen, who is the liaison to our Texas Restaurant Association San Antonio chapter board. She is with us today and offered to have this presentation today. So thank you so much, Carmen, for all that you do for us all the time. And you know, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that over this past 20 months, Karma has just been a godsend, working with our community, helping them with payment plans. Not only that, but alerting us when there's either a gas leak at one of our restaurants or close in proximity. Whenever there's an incident, she gives us an update. And so Karma, we really appreciate you, and I wanted your team to hear that. Now, all the others that are here from CPS Energy, thank you so much for joining us today. And with that, I'll turn it over to, I guess, Rudy.
Well, Dawn, thank you very much. And I'm really pleased to be here as a, I always tell people who don't, kind of understand our customer base, there's only about 10% of our customers are business customers, and 90% of that 10% are small business, which certainly includes our restaurant community. And so how we think about serving our customers really is focused on, the heart and soul of the San Antonio community. And I'd say that, our restaurant, stakeholders are very important to the cultural identity of San Antonio. And certainly we appreciate everything that you do each and every day. We know that the same, challenges that we're facing in terms of costs going up and, finding people to work and do the things that we got to do to serve our customers, just like you are facing, you're facing the same things that we are. So I just want to start by thanking you for being customers and let you know we really appreciate what you do for our community. Today, a lot of really important conversations going on around the community with respect to CPS Energy. I tell everyone that will listen, our organization drives the livelihood and the economy and, people's quality of life here in San Antonio. And so the responsibility that me and my team have for serving is really, it's important. It's important in the community for CPS Energy to be strong. And the things that we're talking about right now with respect to what we've done to prepare ourselves for this winter season, and Corey will walk you through our rate proposal that's making its way through the process right now. These are fundamental priorities for us right now that will ensure that CPS Energy continues to do the job that our community expects of us. We are a community-owned asset. We are owned by our customers. And so the things that you think about us are really important to me individually as the current leader of this organization, and collectively the tone that I am trying to set, with my leadership team and across the organization is really focused on being what our customers expect us to be. So with that, I'm going to get into the presentation here. Throw a question in the chat. Stop me if you will. I'll kind of pause at the end of each slide in case anyone has any questions, but I really appreciate being here. What I'm going to talk about today is winter preparedness and really let you know kind of what we have done to put ourselves in the best position that we can to be ready for this winter. There are a lot of promises being made out there across the community, across Texas about, guarantees that, bad things won't happen this winter season. I'm a realist. I'm going to be honest, with the community. That's just, how I roll. And there are no guarantees, ever that, equipment won't fail, that plants won't go down, that, new storms will pop up that we didn't anticipate, that challenge our infrastructure. What I'm going to tell you is that CPS Energy has done what we can do in the things that we control to be as prepared as we can be. And if we find ourselves in the situation again where there is a need for controlled outages across ERCOT, the experience is going to be better. The experience is going to be more predictable than what it was last go around, because we recognize that, having no power for days is just not an acceptable and shouldn't be an acceptable state for our community and our system overall across ERCOT to be in. So we've been working hard for the last 9 months to be ready for this winter season, and I feel real good about the work that the team has put in a number of areas to do that. Next slide, please. So this gives you a scale of why the February event, Winter Storm Uri, was such a catastrophic cascading event, across Texas. In the past, there are not a lot of load shed, what we call load shed. Those are the controlled outages when the system is under stress, when demand is higher than supply. You have to balance the demand and supply so they don't lose the whole system. And so when ERCOT calls for a load shed, what we call a load shed event, it's to really protect the system from crashing, which has never happened in Texas. But this just shows you the scale, of what we've seen in past events. Doesn't happen frequently. Last time it happened was 10 years before this February. But the scale of which we saw this go around was 5 times anything that we had ever seen previously. And so if you wonder why the system was so unprepared for what happened, it's because nobody had ever contemplated that it was possible that ERCOT could be requesting 20,000 megawatts across the system to be shed. Our percentage of that is 7%, give or take. So when ERCOT calls for a 20,000 megawatt reduction in load, ours is about obviously about 7% of that. So we were right at about 1,600 megawatts, give or take, of load shed during that event at our peak, which is, we had roughly 40% of our customers were impacted in some form during the event, which is never a place that we want to be. Next slide. So, the ERCOT has procedures, and what you see there is kind of a communication matrix that ERCOT uses to inform the public about what's going on. But, as you can see there, we saw an initial load shed event that just got worse as time progressed. And it happened in the middle of the night, 12:30, p.m., right after, Valentine's Day. ERCOT recognized that there was going to be a need to shed load. By 1:21 in the morning, we were shedding load. And so, and that situation just continued to deteriorate because, normally you have portions of Texas that might be under snow or ice, and real cold, and you have other parts of Texas maybe not so much. North Texas is typically the colder area. Obviously, South Texas, not so much. And so you can balance out what's going on around the state so that you don't have the impact everywhere. In this case, the entire state, in fact, the entire central U.S. all the way down into Mexico was under freeze. Not just under freeze, it was under, we were in the single digits here in San Antonio, which never happens. And so the system across Texas just was never intended to you know, we're a warm peaking season, summer peaking season state. We're not a winter peaking state. And people ask, well, why didn't you prepare more for cold weather? We're trying to get plant heat out of our plants in the summer, not keep heat in our plants like you do in the Northeast. So the engineering standards of how we build power plants really have to do with what you're trying to do, either keep heat in or get heat out. And here in Texas, 110 degrees in the summer, you know, it's a safety issue for our employees. So, you know, we've had to recognize that we've got to do things to recognize both the summer and winter peak. But the situation really was a black swan, catastrophic, scenario that now we know can happen, and we've had the ability this year to do some more planning for that. Next slide, please. ERCOT alerts the systems, and by doing that, we alert our customers as the condition of the grid deteriorates. So typically, we're trying to keep a minimum of 3,000 megawatts of what we call reserve capacity. That's the generation available in the event that load continues to rise. And when you get under that 3,000 megawatts, ERCOT starts putting out alerts. What we've recognized is we can't wait until ERCOT, falls below that line. If we think that there's going to be weather that will push us into that, that tight space across our system, going forward, we're going to be alerting our community, a week ahead of time that, hey, we see a weather system coming next week. Could be a possibility, for some stress on the system. Start, taking action so that you and your family are safe. And we would start talking about where the warming centers are going to be, letting us know if you need help getting there for customers who may be on medical equipment. So, in the past, we've kind of followed ERCOT's lead, and what we've recognized is we just can't do that anymore. Next slide, please. So we're taking actions in a lot of ways. Obviously, we are still fighting almost $600 million in what we believe to be unconscionable and illegal, costs that, basically you had somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 billion that got uplifted out of the electric and gas utility sector and dropped into the natural gas supply sector. And we believe that's just fundamentally wrong. Nobody else is fighting but CPS Energy in court to hold our gas producers accountable. And we're going to continue that fight until we've exhausted every last legal means possible. But we believe it's the right thing to do. We've made improvements to our grid management, how we conduct load shed. We've actually put more circuits. We've got around 650 circuits in total in San Antonio in our service territory. We've got another 125 circuits that we put into our load shed program, so we have more capacity to switch load. And that's been a huge step in the right direction from just the experience of what to expect if we find ourselves having to manage controlled outage. We've done a lot of hardening of our critical infrastructure, so the work that our power plant employees have done to weatherize our infrastructure, we're in a lot better place. I think we spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 million this year, and as Corey gets into the rate conversation, we anticipate spending another $31 million in the future over the next couple of years to be compliant with what are regulatory requirements that are coming down from the state level. Our collaboration with SAWS, it's embarrassing, quite frankly, that we had not been more connected operationally with SAWS, who is our partner agency, both owned by the city. Now we know, and we have a plan for keeping their critical infrastructure, on to the extent our system allows us to. And, now they've got some requirements that we're working with them on for backup generation at those pump stations that just can't ever go down. And so we've continued partnering with our owner, the city, on a number of actions that they've suggested we take as part of their Committee for Emergency Preparedness and improving communication. We know we've got to do a better job communicating with our customers and our community in situations where where the whole system is under stress. So we've kind of revamped how we're doing our communication. Hopefully some of y'all have seen text messages or emails or voicemails that you've received letting you know that there's some weather event coming that may impact our reliability. And we're going to continue to utilize every means that we've got to try to reach our customers in times like this and be proactive about it and less reactive about it. I'm going to stop there. Anybody have any questions so far? Okay. Next slide, please. So improvements, we wanted to make sure that our load shed capacity could handle an event like we saw in February. And now, I'm pleased to say that we've done a lot of testing in kind of our test state to be able to run our load shed. We actually could go even more. I think we can handle a load shed event up to 25,000 megawatts across ERCOT. And so I do believe that we're in a better position. At worst, we believe we can meet a 15 minutes on, 15 minutes off load shed event, which is what really should be the standard. And for any level less than 20,000 megawatts, it really would be 15 minutes on, maybe 2 or 3 hours, 15 minutes off, maybe 2 or 3 hours on, because we have more capacity in the system. So, every kind of load shed event is different. Some are just for a couple hours. And obviously in February we saw it was days. And so we got to be prepared for really both of those extremes going forward. And I do believe that we are. Done a lot of training and collaboration across the community. This is an example of a workshop that we held with COSA at the Emergency Operations Center. You see Maria Villagomez there, who is a fantastic partner over at the city. But we've had, I can't even count up the number of exercises that we have done, us and SAWS. We've done one on our own. We've done multiple with the city. And so we are really drilling ourselves to make sure that we're thinking about opportunities for improvements as we go into this winter season. Next slide, please. Again, I mentioned communication. We have all ways, we've got a stakeholder text string now that goes out to all elected officials and, emergency personnel, letting them know when there's something going on in our system that they should be aware of. And then there's still a lot of policy activity going on at the state and federal level that are going to drive regulatory compliance requirements that are going to cost, us money down the road that we've got to pay attention to. But I mean, there have been over 30 rulemakings at the state level that my governmental affairs team is paying attention to and participating in that have also driven a lot of our response over the last 9 months. Next slide. Again, I talked about weatherization and kind of the idea of getting heat out of the plant, keeping heat in the plant. In the wintertime, we basically have to do a lot of temporary work, hang up space heaters, build temporary enclosures, do pipe insulation, tracer wire on pipe that we believe could freeze. We actually had a 6-inch diameter pipe with water flowing through it that froze. That should not happen. That is not a scenario we could ever have predicted, but for whatever reason it did. So now we've got to worry about pipe, like that also has to be weatherized. So we're really turning over every stone. We've got an independent third party that's come in and validated that the things that we're focused on are the right things to keep our power plants running. We've taken our outage schedule, that usually includes some outages in January, February timeframe, and we've pulled those out of that timeframe to before and after what we expect to be the coldest part of the season, so that our plants are available. We did have some plants that are on scheduled maintenance during February last month, and and across ERCOT, really everybody's pulled their power plants out of that maintenance window so that we can all be ready. And I think that's one area of improvement that really was the right thing to do to ensure that our power plants are available. But everybody across ERCOT is doing the things that we're doing. I mean, I know what I've got to, I had to sign, 17 what we call, affidavits to the state saying we have done the work that we believe we need to do to be ready for this winter, and every other generator across the state, and not at at the organizational level, the CEO has to make that attestation. I am on the hook for the performance of our power plants, as it should be. I'm responsible ultimately for our organization, to our community. So the accountability is there, and I think it's really, really important. Next slide, please. Again, the natural gas supply was an issue, and that's kind of one of the other unknowns that I keep talking about. I can only run a gas plant to the extent that I have gas being delivered, to my plant to run it. And so, I think there's a little less certainty about what the natural gas suppliers have done to winterize their infrastructure. That's an unknown. That's something that I can't, that's a risk I can't mitigate, for our community. But the things that we have done, we've got more baseload gas that we've purchased in advance of this winter season. We've added additional storage capacity, which is something our board chair has been really, really adamant about, and the amount of gas we can pull out of storage when we need it has been increased. And we're paying more for financial hedges to ensure that if the price goes up, there's some amount of limit to how much. To how much that we can pay. So the way we manage risk from a commodity standpoint is both on the physical side, how much gas can we purchase in advance to be ready for a really high demand, peak, and then financially, how can we cover our position so that we're not as exposed to market volatility when it does come. Next slide, please. Again, when you look at our reserve margin, this, kind of where we are today, 1,100 megawatts, 22%, really, really good. We went out and purchased some additional capacity. We've looked at, what is the potential stress? We still believe, if we hit the peak that we could hit again, we still believe we'll have, a little left over to be able to cover the needs. So overall, this is part of our risk assessment. It's looking at our supply. It's looking at, what we expect the peak demand might look like, and then running some stress scenarios to make sure that our position is ultimately covered. Next slide. There's a lot of conflicting information out there. Is this going to be a winter that's colder, that's as cold as it was last year? Is it going to be a winter that's not as cold? We believe the answer is probably somewhere in the middle, but we look at the same information that every other utility across the country is looking at to look at the forecast and plan for that. I think we will be ready for a colder winter than what NOAA and our weather forecasters are telling us it's going to be. But again, you take this information with a grain of salt. You still have to be prepared for a worst case scenario. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to stop there and turn it over to one of the most talented CFOs in San Antonio, Corey Kaczynski. We're very lucky to have Corey and his team doing the things that they're doing for CPS Energy. Corey and I and the entire leadership team have really been partners in the conversation regarding our rate proposal. So I'm going to turn it over to Corey, but I'm going to stop here and just make sure nobody has any questions for me about the winter. All right. Corey, it's all yours.
All right. And thank you, Rudy. I appreciate that. We worked on our flattery this morning. It's good to be with you guys. Don, thank you for the intro. I haven't spoken to this organization before, but with everything going on, I've been getting out around and meeting different organizations. So I want to start a little bit before I get into the slide, just talk a little bit about the process and the work we've been doing with the city. The last couple of months have been really good, I think, in the back and forth conversations that we've needed to have between our board and our stakeholders and the city. So we've talked a lot about our kind of revised approach, and I'll mention that as we go forward. And we've had 2 meetings so far at City Council, just to orient. I'm sure you may have been aware, and we'll have 2 more meetings at City Council with a vote intended the second week of January from both our board and the City Council. So no votes have been taken. We're just kind of in the conversation phase. The first slide I have is really contextual on slide 16. just give some context to what's changed over the last 8 years, and 8 years is relevant because that's the last time we came for a rate request. The big thing that jumps off on the top that we try and share is just the amount of cost savings that we've tried to squeeze out of the organization. It's been close to $900 million over the last decade. It's a combination of operational savings. We have over $100 million in savings during that time just from refinancing our debt, which is just a function of the strong credit rating we've had, and other savings. So there's been a lot of work that the team has been doing collectively to try and avoid having to go for a rate request. Other big changes that kind of jump off the page is growth. Everyone knows, and you guys probably know better than most how fast we're growing. You can see from a customer perspective on the left-hand side, nearly 125,000 electric customers and 36,000 on the gas. That's obviously required a lot of investment in our system, whether it be gas lines or electric lines. And ultimately, we've been making these investments over the last 8 years at today's prices without having adjusted, the prices we're charging our customers, which we've gotten to the point now where we obviously need additional rate support, and that's why we're coming forward with the ask. There are other big elements of spend that we invest in beyond kind of the infrastructure resiliency that Rudy was talking about. There's a lot of technology underpinning our customer systems, our financial reporting, a lot of the operational systems out in the field that are 10, 20 years old, and they're just coming to their end of life. So the next 5 or 6 years, there's a lot of investment that we're putting into it, and that's partially a driver of the rate request. And I'll talk more about that. Next slide. So this is the number that we showed publicly at the City Council. This is a base rate increase of 3.85%. I'll use the phrase base rate because that's, as you know, there's different components of the bill. This doesn't take into account the fuel component or the regulatory component, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. So this just applies to that. The revenue that we're looking to get from that rate request is about $73 million. And that's on top of a forecasted budget of close to $2.9 billion for next year. So it's small relatively speaking, but nonetheless it's a little bit it's pretty consistent with the size of the last rate request from a dollar perspective. We recommended implementation from March 1 of next year, so it's still a couple of months before it would be effective, assuming we're successful in the approval of that. And the thing that I'll note that we talked about from a strategy approach was that for this rate request, we are focusing on just kind of the immediate financial pressures and the necessary investments that we need. We're dealing with the knowns. A lot of the other larger issues that we need to come to conclusion on around future generation sources, the extended conversation around rate restructuring that the community wants to have. Those were issues that we thought we originally were going to be able to tackle during this rate request, but for a variety of reasons, that those are complex issues that require further discussion with the various stakeholder groups on our board, and it was, our judgment that we would take those items off the table for this rate request, stabilize and shore up CPS, make sure we got the dollars to do the additional investments that Rudy was talking about, and really buy time for the community to have those conversations in a more deliberative manner without feeling rushed. Because I think there was a lot of folks feeling rushed earlier, and I think this helps kind of ease that. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what's included? Rudy mentioned, I think, one of these line items before. Kind of 4 key things. There's incremental funding for infrastructure resiliency, which is broadly speaking all the improvements we would need to make to our generating resources and improvements to our distribution infrastructure. And a lot of these are in alignment. Like Rudy said, we spent about a couple $1 million on low-hanging fruit this year. Going forward, we think for next fiscal year, probably $30 to $35 million of investment. There's a lot of rules that haven't been finalized yet at the state level that we think will be by next year. And then even in the following year, an equal to or greater amount of investment, because this issue really is about managing what you can now, but also making longer term investments for the future, and that's what these incremental dollars would go towards. I mentioned technology. You know, an incremental 15 million is going towards that, but there's a lot of investment just in our core budget around updating those platforms over the next 5 to 6 years. Obviously, keeping up with growth, that continues to be, you know, good for our community, but there is a cost to that, and keeping up with the speed at that which is happening. And then people, we've talked a lot about, Rudy's talked a lot about staffing levels and kind of where we're at. We're close to the 2,900 mark right now, and we think we're probably more comfortable around the 3,300 range. So part of the recommended request here is really to stabilize staffing levels back to what we think would be, you know, levels that help prevent, you know, backlogs in orders and requests and things of that nature, ensure we got the right staffing on the phones, ensure Karma's team's got the right staffing because they're excellent, but, you know, they got to have the right support and the right team. And that, you know, that's all part of serving our community. So we think, you know, this is an incremental approach. It hits kind of the 4 key areas that we think, you know, either we need or our customers you know, expect and want us to make investment into. Okay, next slide. So this is the winter storm conversation. We already talked about how we're fighting those costs. And just for clarity, I've said this a lot, you know, in different forums. We hear $1 billion a lot because that's the total invoiced amount. Of that billion, there's about 418 million that we have paid and has gone out the door, either for power or for natural gas. Now, those are the costs that we have validated and have acknowledged that, you know, there was a premium associated with that fuel. We're okay with it up to this amount, and this is what we've paid. But we have not recovered those costs from our customers yet. And we strategically didn't recover those costs from our customer because the only tool in our toolbox to recover it is through the fuel adjustment, which is pretty quick. And we don't want to slam our customers with, you know, couple thousand, if you're a large business, you know, much larger bills in a couple month window. So what we're proposing, and this has been the strategy we've been working through with our board and city, was to have our board and city council approve what we're calling the regulatory asset, which is just jargon really, but it's a mechanism and a tool that the city council has authority to approve that will allow us to hold these costs on our balance sheet over an extended period of time and expense it during that time frame that we recommend, and recover that correspondingly from our customers over that time frame. So basically, we're recommending recovering these costs over 25 years. And what that means from a bill impact on a residential side, I'll show some commercial ones as well here later. It's about, you know, $1.25, $1.26 per month, and that's about $24 million a year that we would recover. So we would recommend doing that over 25 years. You know, just for context, this strategy of spreading the cost out from customers and recovering it over time is exactly in line with what every other utility has been doing. Whether there have been 60 plus proposals in Texas and around the surrounding states with different companies recovering, you know, the cost over 1 year to 28 years and the bill impact from $1 to $58 per month. So the range is out there. What's different about us and what Rudy talked about is we're not recovering or proposing to recover the full invoiced amount. We're fighting half of it. So the remaining half, about 587 million that we have disputed, be very clear, we haven't paid those dollars. So CPS isn't out those funds, they're disputed amounts. So we're not recovering for those from any of our customers. We're still litigating them. We haven't put those dollars in our rate model because we're not making any presumptions of how these items get litigated. We're just going to keep talking about how it works out. But there is importance to us having this approval before the end of the fiscal year because without this approval by the end of our fiscal year, we'd have to take action on recovering these costs one way or the other. And we just think that spreading it out over time is just more palatable for our community. Okay, a little long-winded there, but I wanted to kind of get that out because we get a ton of questions about that winter storm fuel cost. Okay, next question, or next slide, sorry. This is what it would look like from a bill impact perspective for us as individuals. And the next slide I think I have will be the different customer groups. wait, no, let's go to the other. Let's stay on the residential one real quick. So just for clarity, that the top line base rate is at 3.85% base rate increase I was talking about, and that's about 384 for a residential customer, and the fuel cost correspondingly adds up to about the $5 total bill impact that was in the papers this morning that was talked about. So a little more modest than I think we had anticipated originally. And the next slide is the view here on slide 21 with the various customer groups, and this is including the winter storm recovery. So generally speaking, the bill impact, is still within that range of 3.6 to 3.8. I think the small commercial usage level is about 5,000 kilowatt hours, just for context. We have other information we can probably get you offline to just show the different ranges, because small commercial has a very wide range of usage in that customer group. And then you see the gas is a little bit higher. They don't have the benefit of the blended fuel mix that the electric customers have. And so their total bill impact, including the winter storm recovery, is a little bit higher. So that's how it breaks down depending on where you fall as a business. Okay, next slide. Oh, and Rudy talked about just kind of the engagement process. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have a couple more meetings with City Council that'll occur. One's next week, and then we'll go off for the Christmas, New Year's holiday, and we'll come back the second week of January, and that's when we'll meet with our board of trustees. They'll vote on both the increase and the regulatory asset, and then City Council after that. And we'll keep having multiple touch points with our broader community, like this event, and the other stakeholder groups like the Rate Advisory Committee and the Citizens Advisory Committee. And otherwise, we're just around to answer questions and come out to events and whatever you have. And I think that's our last slide. Oh, no, sorry, there's some dates here just for reference, but I think that's the last slide now. All right.
Look,
very good.
Just to kind of cap off, what's the takeaway from, why we're talking about a rate increase. It's never a good time to come in and ask our community to support us with more revenue, especially after a pandemic, after a winter storm where folks were really upset about how we performed, and just emotionally have not been able to get beyond what happened in February, and I understand it. CPS Energy, there's been a lot of conversation about rebuilding trust in the community, which is right in my wheelhouse of what I do and kind of why I'm the right person at the right time to take this challenge on here at CPS Energy, to get out there and have one-on-one conversations with our community about how they felt about what we did, and try to convince them as best I can that we hear them. We're listening, and we're putting that into action. It's hard to rebuild trust when your service levels are declining, and right now our service levels are declining. We're having to make really hard prioritization decisions about, do we invest in a regulatory requirement of winterizing our power plants or replace old poles, both of which have consequential impacts to our customers at the end of the day. We're down close to 500 employees from where we need to be. I got to have employees to run our system. It's as simple as that. We're not talking about executives. We're talking about operators and engineers and accountants and the people who do the work day in and day out. We're having a hard time competing right now with other utilities around us and across the country. People are, other organizations are coming to CPS Energy right now because we have talent, and so I've got to do something to try to get our employee levels back to what I believe to be a reliable level, so that Karma's customer engineering designers are being asked to do a reasonable carry a reasonable amount of load, because it'll be harder and harder the further we get away from financial health to meet the needs of a growing community. So as Corey mentioned, what we're asking for is fundamental. Every bit of what we're asking for will allow us to continue to do the job our customers expect out of us. And you know, we'll have to do a good job of coming in more frequently. The fact is, nobody's paying the same thing they were 8 years ago. It's been 8 years since we have been at the city asking for rate support of any kind. And in that time, we've found close to $1 billion in cost-cutting measures that have allowed us to extend the time frame, you know, this long. But it's just not healthy to go this long without a rate conversation with our community. And you know, and we recognize the time is not good, and you know, with folks still trying to recover from the impacts of the pandemic, you know, but at the same time, I think it'll be worse if you compound that with reliability issues that are sure to come if we don't do something. You know, so that's, you know, at the end of the day, I just want to be honest about where we are. We're doing everything we can to be good stewards of every dollar we get. But you know, but at some point in time, costs and circumstances just require us to have this conversation. And right now, you know, unfortunately, the time is now. So, any questions?
Rudy, I did want to ask you, how do our rates compare to other large cities?
Sure. So we always kind of do a combined look. You know, we're a combined electric and gas utility, largest combined electric and gas utility in the country. Our rates compare very favorably on a total bill basis. You know, both at the state level and across the country, we would still be, you know, in the bottom three of rates, you know, across Texas. You know, we're a little average on the electric side. We're lower on the gas side. When you combine them together, you know, there's good value there when you look at the total energy bill. So this still allows, one of the questions that council asked yesterday, this still allows us to remain competitive across the state in terms of total energy impact.
Thank you.
All right.
I do have one other question. When it comes to the infrastructure, particularly the downtown area, how often is that checked? You know, I think of the electric lines, gas lines. Are they safe? You know, with all the historic infrastructure, I've always wondered about that.
Well, the downtown network is probably, you know, our most reliable part of our system. We've had a few issues over the last few weeks with a lot of construction going on downtown. We've had, you know, other companies, not our companies, bored through our lines that have caused some challenges for us. But overall, downtown is one of the most reliable parts of our system because of the nature of the network that we're on. Around the community, I got to tell you, I mean, as the community ages, our infrastructure ages. So, you know, there are a lot of poles that need to be replaced. You know, we've got growth going on everywhere that we're trying to keep up with. We've got supply chain issues like everybody else has, trying to get meters and transformers and cable and basic equipment that we need, you know, to operate our system. So, you know, and those are the type of investments that end up getting pushed off because you can only do so much. You know, so when you have to spend on a regulatory required upgrade, you know, that's less of tree trimming and less of, you know, pole replacements and less of, you know, kind of redoing elements of our system that are just old and need to be replaced. Those things end up getting pushed off as a result of having to pick and choose, you know, what we can invest in. And that's, you know, that's the story I'm trying to explain to council right now is, you know, for older areas of infrastructure, you know, it's those areas that end up suffering long term because we're pushing off that investment. And, you know, we'd like to be balanced with those decisions.
Good morning. I have a quick question. I was asking Karma offline what we're considered. We're a $500,000 a year plus customer of CPS, 80% electricity and 20% on the gas side. This bill recovery, how many years are we looking at? A full 25 years of this amount on a monthly basis?
Yeah, so Pete, great question, and thank you. I think I'd like your background as my background. You know, it makes everybody happy when they see me Tierra back there. The way it works is that, you know, it's 25 years, but every new customer that comes on our system that's not here today ends up picking up a portion of those costs that end up, you know, kind of peanut buttering that cost over the long term. So that 25 years, as our system grows, likely comes in, from the outer years. So as our system grows, the burden on every customer lessens, if you will. So maybe it's 25 years, maybe it's 22 or 23 years or 20 years, depending upon how our system continues to grow. But you know, we have to really plan for that asset. So you plan it over a 25-year horizon, and if you find ways to cut that back, then certainly we're going to do everything we can to pay it off in a reasonable manner. The main issue is the bill impact. You know, we'll spread it over 50 years, you know, if that was the right thing to do to get it in the right range. But we believe, you know, some companies have only done it over a few years, and you're paying $15-20 a month more on the residential side, you know, to get it paid off quicker. We tried to find a balance, and for us, you know, in our conversations with the city, 25 years seemed like the right call.
So if you're successful with the lawsuit, would that mitigate this impact? The current proposal, no. We've already settled those. That is costs that we know. You know, the 586 or whatever number is, $1 million left. We'll likely settle some of that at some point in time. We're continuing to work to settle with some of the third parties. You know, so that 418 will likely go up a bit over time as we settle. But you know, my hope is that we'll be able to clear some of that out because we're successful in our litigation strategy. So I'm hopeful that it will not be the full $1 billion ultimately that our community has to pick up. So maybe on a going forward basis, I mean, obviously we're during the holidays, and obviously you guys got to get through this winter season, but maybe we can have another event and talk about cost saving strategies. I know one of the things that we did with CPS, I mean, we would have been an even bigger customer if it wasn't for something that we did with one of your predecessors, Doyle Beneby, and converting most of our Christmas lights here at Mi Tierra to LED, which was a huge adjustment. But so you know, there was a huge subsidy that went along with that, both from a manufacturer of the Christmas lights, plus you know, what CPS was doing in terms of trying to you know, mitigate any more power plant growth. So, you know, anything that we can do on our side as customers that can help us become more efficient, I think that would be helpful for everybody.
Well, we're in the partnership business, Pete, so I appreciate that offer. We'll take you up on it.
James, Tamara, do you all have any questions?
Hi, Dawn. No, thank you. All of my questions actually have been asked. Thank you, Rudy, for taking time out of your schedule. I know you're busy to address these issues. And thank you, Dawn, for putting it together.
Of course. Tamara and her team, Michelle Matson, they're such great partners in the Hotel and Lodging Association. So thank you for joining us. Well, Rudy, thank you so much for this presentation. You and Corey and team, we really appreciate your time this morning. And I do hope that you're considering this position. I do hope that they make it permanent. I would love to see you in this position permanently.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dawn. I'll let you mention that to our board when you have the opportunity. Board's working on their process. I'm literally really just focused on, you know, doing a good job right now while I have the opportunity.
Well,
we want to help you do that, and no matter how far up you go, make sure you take Karma with you. She absolutely rocks, and she does a great job for our industry.
Yep, Pete, I appreciate that. So that's the worst kept secret at CPS Energy. Karma is a rock star inside and outside the organization.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time today.
Have a great day and happy holidays to all of you.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.